Or
It's time. It's time. It's time. I know it's time. The generation for reparation. Pay up, time to pay up. Reparation. Right now, reparation. Especially ours, you know it's due. Pay up, time to pay up. Right now, reparation. Pay up, time to pay up. Right now, reparation. Time for reparation. Right now, time for reparation. Time for reparation. Right now, time for reparation. Reparations for building this nation. Lynching and burning castration. Selling children, family separation. Right now, time for reparation. Millions of slave ships landed. Whips chained and branded. 300 years of free labor. We ain't asking for no favor. Time to pay. Right now, time for reparation. Time for reparation. Right now, time for reparation. Pay up, time to pay up. Right now, reparation. Pay up, time to pay up. Right now, reparation. Reparations for reconstruction. Red summers of destruction. Segregation, Jim Crow corruption. Right now, time for reparation. Reparations for the Constitution. Said we were 3/5 human. Reparations are overdue. 40 acres ain't come due. Time for reparation. Right now, time for reparation. Time for reparation. Right now, time for reparation. Pay up, time to pay up. Right now, reparation. Pay up, time to pay up. Right now, time for reparation. Time for reparation. Right now, time for reparation. Pay up, time to pay up. Right now, reparation. Pay up, time to pay up. Right now,
I'm Al McFarlane. Welcome to Conversations with Al McFarlane. As always, starting off with the wonderful and powerful music of our friend and colleague, Gary Hines, and the Sounds of Blackness. Beautiful music. The sentiment is mine exactly. Time for reparations. And I'm here joined by my colleague, Brenda Lyle Gray. We're expecting a couple of other guests to join us momentarily. But until we do, Brenda, how you doing? Good to see you.
Good afternoon, Al McFarlane.
Oh, great to be here. You know, I love doing this show on Tuesday because we're live on KFAI, and KFAI is the preeminent multicultural community radio station in the Minnesota marketplace. We used to have a saying that this is a different radio station every hour. That is because at any given point and time of the day, you might hear Hmong language, you might hear Lao, you may hear Latino, Spanish language programming, Native American programming, and other linguistic groups, cultural groups from around the world, and people with different political persuasions. So it's a great place for neighborhood people to gather, to share, information, to express and celebrate culture. And what's wonderful and powerful now is that we have the ability to use this digital technology so that not only are we doing live radio, but we're doing live, in effect, television, live to Facebook and live to YouTube. Those who are listening on the radio, if you want to see the live feed of the program, just go to Insight News Facebook and join us there. You can be a part of it. We'd love to have your feedback as well. And so if you are monitoring the Facebook stream, we're monitoring the questions and the comments, and we'd love to have your thoughts and your feelings. I wanted to talk about a couple of things, and I'm standing by for a call from my colleague and friend, Terry Jones. He's the owner and editor of the Data News Weekly newspaper in New Orleans. And obviously thinking about him and all the people in New Orleans behind the horrific weather event. And so hopefully we'll have a chance to talk about the impact of the hurricane on our friends, our sisters and brothers in New Orleans, but I'm also equally concerned about the impact of COVID-19, particularly in the South, in Louisiana, in Mississippi, in Georgia, Alabama, and Florida, where these states have particularly been resistant to people getting vaccinated, and therefore particularly targeted by the variant that is making COVID-19 a pandemic of the unvaccinated. So I'm concerned about that in general as well. And I have a general concern about what's happening with how we are impacted by and feeling and thinking about our country's withdrawal of troops from Afghanistan. And I know there have been people both in anguish and in sorrow, some feeling like we've abandoned friends, others thinking, though, that this was a hard decision that had to be made, and glad that it was being made. Now, if you're listening and have a comment on any of those topics, click on to Facebook, and we'd like to share your comments, your thoughts, and your feelings. Brenda, what's on your mind today? What kind of things are top of mind with you? Let me tell people that you're in Arizona, right?
I'm in
New Mexico.
I'm in New Mexico.
New Mexico, right? Yeah.
Yep. I think my first thought was how the 19-year-old is doing from the weekend. Has there been any word on her? I was thinking about this high schooler.
Tell the background, because I've not reported on that yet, but tell the background that you know.
No, I don't know that much. I just know that she had been shot in the neck, and I wasn't for sure if it was a stray bullet, if she was coming out of school. But the last report was that she might not be able to talk again.
Mm-hmm.
So, again, heartbreak behind injury to our children. They're still babies.
Mm-hmm.
I still look at them as babies. And I just feel we're abandoning them. That was the first thought. And reading a lot more about voter suppression, very concerned about that. And I hope that we step up like we did before, but as Kamal King, attorney, said, it's not going to be a repeat of Obama. We're going to have to do things differently, and we're in a real critical period with so many levels, with the virus and the kids in school and wear a mask, not wear a mask. And it's tough, but we're not giving up.
Brenda, let's do this. Take a minute and have you talk about your book. Well, let you explain and present your work as an author and as a published author in your book. Would you talk about that for a second?
That book is really interesting. I think my writing career is interesting in the fact that I've always written, starting at 5 years old and traveling across the country in the back of my father's Buicks. and developing characters. And I mean, it was just there. It was the gift. But I couldn't get into journalism school at the University of Missouri. They would not let Black females enroll. So I ended up becoming an educator, and I'm sure that was God's will. And then my childhood friend and media mogul in Minneapolis read one of my editorials, and I've been writing for him for a year now and working very hard and but very proud and very honored that I had been given an opportunity to live my gift out. Bayel Perazim is really a strange project. I couldn't even pronounce the title. I had never read 2 Samuel, 5th chapter, 20th verse, knew nothing about it except David was one of my favorite biblical characters because we had a lot in common. Baal is another name for God, and Perazim means breakthrough. So the book is about breakthroughs. And I think it's pretty timely, even though I wrote it 3 years ago. I wrote it under very strange circumstances and dangerous circumstances, to be quite honest. But it's on gratitude and forgiveness and prayer. And believe it or not, I was writing a Hallmark love story, a romance. And then all of a sudden at 3:15 one morning, I got instructions that Bayel Perazim was going to be written. And I wasn't living in the safest area. I lived with my daughters in LA, but we had gang problems, 4th of July and New Year's Eve. It was like war. And there I was in the little room and typing. And when my computer crashed, I wrote. And then I got it published by using payments out of my Social Security check. And if I had had marketing, it probably would have gone a long way. But it has been very instrumental in helping a lot of people. So I take pride in that.
Well, it certainly got you to me. I'm glad to have discovered the book and to rediscovered my connection to you. Let me tell people what I'd love to say, and that is that you and I started off as probably 5-year-olds. We were classmates in kindergarten in Booker T. Washington grade school in Kansas City, Missouri. And I think we both were enrolled first at D.A. Holmes, but there was a fire in that school. Now, my memory could be fuzzy, so you can correct me.
No, that's true. The white
Brenda.
flight.
And because
they
of the
weren't gonna let
fire,
us there.
our class couldn't start at D.A. Holmes, and we were sent to another school some 10 or 12 blocks away from where I lived anyway, and that was the Booker T. Washington School. The background is that D.A. Holmes that year, and that would have been, let's see, my kindergarten year would have been 1951 or 2. Was it 51 or 2? And the school we were going to go to was a school that was being integrated that year, I think, for the first time.
Right.
So it was shifting from being a white school in a white neighborhood to being a school that would be predominantly for Black people. And part of the resistance of white people was to try to torch the school. The school was set ablaze. Therefore, we couldn't go to school our kindergarten year. Therefore, we and many others who were slated to go to D.A. Holmes were sent into makeshift and overcrowded classrooms at the traditional Black elementary and middle school, which was Booker T. Washington School. Now, what was unique about our experience, Brenda, was that they didn't have space for the kindergarten class that we were in. And so I think across the street or a block from the school, there was a dance hall on the 2nd floor. And we were, that dance hall was repurposed for kindergarten classroom. So during the day, we 4 and 5 and 6-year-olds sat at the feet of our teachers, and you always make reference to Fran Webster, who was our kindergarten teacher, and her colleagues. But I think in the evening, that place reverted to a dance hall. And
Right.
if I remember correctly, there's still the smell of alcohol
Right.
in the building, right?
Right.
And so that was unique. That's how we started our school career, being in a dance hall, but families, community, neighborhood committed to our education.
They were boycotting outside with signs, our parents, while we were sitting on the floor.
Talk about that. Talk about that story.
There's a book called Moving to the Top of the Hill, and it was written when maybe about 3 or 4 years after all of the white flight happened. And it has pictures of our parents and the women who worked in the neighborhoods, at the stores, and cleaners and whatever. And they were carrying mother-made signs. You know, our children deserve desks and our children deserve books. And I also became a revolutionary at 5 years old because I wasn't going to sit on the floor one particular day. And it's so interesting. On the Healing Circle, we talk about the need for parents to establish rules, and we knew where they were coming from. I'm 74 and I can still feel the angst of what was going to happen when my father left the post office and came to pick up his revolutionary daughter who disrespected her teacher. And I think I was on punishment for a year, but I was still angry. But anyway, we remember because look at how we've all turned out.
Yeah. So talk about that. I often ask people to think back, remember their dreams. And do you remember your dreams, your expectations of yourself when you were 5, 6, and 7 years old? Who was Brenda Lyle as a kindergartner, first and second grade? You've already described that you were a revolutionary. So
I was.
What other descriptions do you remember, and would you use to describe who you were to yourself at the time? Who did you see yourself as at that time, at age 4 and age 5? And how did the world look to you?
I couldn't be put in a box, a colored box. And I was always asking questions. And my family was so mixed up. My mother looked white, and her family passed for white. And my father's family were like opposite in many respects, but not to their fault. But my parents wanted so much for me. So we traveled around the country with a green book, starting at 5. And that's how I ended up in Santa Fe, because I fell in love with the town when I was 6 years old. It was like in another world. But I could just never be.
Santa Fe is where you are now. Santa Fe is where you are.
Santa Fe, New Mexico. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it will never be the same in my lifetime, but it was fantastic. I mean, the history is still here. My grandfather supposedly was Black Cherokee, so I wanted to know more about the Native American background, and ironically, I ended up working on the Pueblos in New Mexico, off and on for 7 years under Governor Bill Richardson. And he was doing fabulous work as a governor. A lot of people didn't like him, but I thought he was absolutely great. So anyway, I guess I teetered. I was a debutante and an honor student, and I was a wannabe Black Panther. And I never wanted to be in the camera, because if my father found out, I was done. So I kind of balanced. But we had a wonderful, wonderful childhood. To the point where Al's cousin, Bernard, one of my fondest memories is him rolling me down the hill at Brooklyn Park when there was 3 feet of snow and just getting a kick out of my having to climb back up. And I mean, we had the type of fun and safe fun where we just laughed and laughed until we cried. But there were expectations, and our parents and God, that was our direction. So, and we took care of each other. Every time I think about it, I think about Tyrone Terrell. I just wrote about him. It's fresh on my mind. But I can just see Tyrone knocking on the door saying, Miss Fanny, you okay today? You got food? You need a ride? I mean, it was there. Not to say that we didn't have problems. You know, there was 22nd and Vine, as Peter Hayden talked about, and you know, there was Italian mafia and whatever. I mean, that was the 40s and the 50s. We were born in 1947. It wasn't perfect, but it wasn't mean to the point where you put 64 bullets in somebody inside of a cemetery or in a funeral home and say, die, die, die. It wasn't that cruel. This is cruel to me. And especially when you are shooting babies. So anyway.
My thinking and recollection, Brenda, is that you used the word, there were expectations. And I think that everywhere we went and everywhere we turned, people affirmed our dignity, our humanity, their love for us, and their expectation that the education and manners and gentility that they were imparting to us and that we were imbibing would be part and parcel of our ascent into both responsibility and accountability. I believe we grew up believing that we would make a difference in community and in the world. We'd make a difference in our families and a difference in our neighborhoods, that we were children who were raised and reared with a point and a purpose. And the purpose was to launch into careers as champions and change makers.
And we did.
And we did. And I think we fulfilled that, you know, but that's how I remember it. And so given that, you know, I also want to think about how I dreamed and who I dreamed that I was and what I wanted to be. And I don't know, you know, do you remember all of your grade school teachers? Who were your teachers? Let's talk about, I remember Miss Matthews in kindergarten or in first grade, maybe.
She was my 6th grade teacher. First grade, I had Miss Chipley.
Okay, I didn't know her.
And 2nd grade, Miss Lewis.
I had Miss Caldwell in 2nd grade, I think.
And she lived on 30th Street. I remember that because we were on 28th. And then 3rd grade, I had Miss Webb, Verna Webb.
I had Miss Johnson for 3rd grade, I think. 3rd or 4th, I'm not sure.
I had Miss Johnson for 4th grade.
Maybe I had her for 4th grade then.
Yeah.
Might have been 4th
and
grade.
5th grade, I had Grace Kirkpatrick that I just adored.
Right.
And then Miss Matthews for 6th grade.
Right. Okay.
And what was so beautiful about them, and I just wrote about it when I wrote that article, Man Talking, and I remembered Mr. Kane and Mr. Goodseal and our principal, George Perry, and they were so distinguished, you know, suit and tie. And I remember the smell of their cologne, and their classrooms were just impeccable. And you know, we were kind of like Ruby Bridges. We had police around because we didn't know when the torchbearers would come back. And, you know, we kind of had that, but our parents were so protective. And again, we had the churches and we had strong leaders, and, you know, we just felt safe and protected. So, and one of my childhood memories were the whites coming from the plaza to look at our lights during Christmas. because our blocks were all lit up. One
Okay.
block would have candles, and one block would have another Christmas where almost every home and, lawns were meticulous and flowers. And we moved in and it was just a beautiful area. And, we were good. I was mad because I couldn't be in the Easter parade on the plaza. Black kids weren't allowed. So that was another thing that really kind of angered me. But otherwise,
When did you get to the plaza? And let's tell listeners, let's give them a mental picture of the plaza versus our neighborhood, because where we live was really on the edge. We were on the growing edge of the Black community. 27th and 28th Street were neighborhoods that were just becoming available to Black people, and 31st Street was still the dividing line that you didn't cross. And then later it was 36th and 39th and out to 40th. So over a period of time, our Black people expanded southward from downtown.
That's
blocks
because they
at a
kept
time.
running. They kept moving.
Yeah.
They wanted away. It wasn't, it reminds me of today when one of my students said, I just can't understand why we all can't sit at the table together. It just wasn't that way.
I'm getting a call from Terry Jones. He's trying to connect with us now.
Oh, good.
But talk more about the Santa Fe neighborhood we lived in.
It was a great place. There were progressive people. I remember Bubba Kleiss, who lived up the street from me, and he was the one that brought the Golden Gloves boxing to the area, and known all over the country for what he had done to help young people break into that sport. And, we had everyone. Lawyers, doctors, we had them all. And we had hardworking people. Like my father worked 2 jobs. So we had them at all levels, and everyone got along and took care of each other. And they had associations. 28th Street Club. I remember my father was the president of it for years. Boy Scout troops, and we were just safe. And it was fun. Even church. Because we could sit in the balcony.
How about your college years? What were they like?
Tough. They were tough. I remember freshman year, white fraternity going down the street, brandishing Confederate uniforms and waving Confederate flags. And then my daughter goes to a college, and I have to move on campus because it's covered with Confederate flags. It was tough. And I think I was more angry because I wanted to be a writer, and I just couldn't, and they couldn't explain to me. I had top advisors and everything with my writing, and they just wouldn't let me in. But there was reasons, because I don't think I would be writing the way I am today had I started out differently. So everything has a reason and a season. And thank you, Al McFarlane.
Well, thank you for being available. Now, I'll tell this story as well. Brenda and I are connected in part because of my connection with Brenda Isom. And Brenda Isom and Brenda Lyle and my cousin Teola Powell are all great friends, and they've been friends for a lifetime. And Brenda Isom and I were born minutes apart in the same hospital. The hospital was the University of Kansas Medical Center. They called it, I think, Bell Memorial Hospital at the time. And it was in Kansas City, Kansas, though we lived in Kansas City, Missouri. So why are you in Kansas being born? That's because there wasn't a decent place to be born in Missouri. And our parents had the means and the desire, and they drove our children across us. They drove themselves across the state line, their children, so that they could be born in a place that they considered a place of dignity. And so that's how we, and so I talk to Brenda every now and then, to Brenda Isom, because we were born, like I said, 15 minutes apart. And the story is that she and her mom were in the operating room in labor, but it was going on. My mom came in labor and about to happen. So they wheeled Brenda's mom out and wheeled my mom in. I was born. And so I feel that's cutting in line. And that's kind of what I've been doing all my life, is cutting in line. So it's consistent. But that's a nice story. And then through talking to her, she remembered and reminded me of you and our us being classmates as kids, and what you were doing now. And that's how we got connected. And as a consequence, we're working together again. And it's a wonderful thing.
I see Terry's on, right?
Terry Jones is here. Now, Terry Jones is a good and dear friend and colleague. Terry, you're a little off camera there, to move your camera to the right or to the left a little bit. But Terry is a colleague and a leader in the Black Press of America. He's the owner, publisher, editor of Data News Weekly in New Orleans. And I reached out to Terry to ask him to give me some feedback on what's happening, the impact of the hurricane in the New Orleans community, because I know his business suffered when Katrina hit 16 years ago, almost to the date. So I said, let me give Terry a call, and Terry, talk about what's going on in New Orleans and with your business, and just to talk. Terry, good afternoon. Welcome to Conversations with Al McFarlane. Good to see you, my friend. Don't have volume. Somehow you're muted. No, I'm not able to hear you. I see you. Yeah. And your image doesn't say muted, so we'll work that out in a couple of seconds. Kelvin, maybe you can try to work with him too to make sure we get good sound. But Terry and I go back like a generation. We've traveled around the country at the annual conventions for the Black Press of America. Terry's always been an officer, like either a secretary, treasurer, vice president, first vice president of the organization, helping organize our conventions in different cities around the country and in the Caribbean. And the Black Press of America is called National Newspaper Publishers Association. It's a collection of over 200 newspapers that our people create and own and sustain, with a singular focus on ensuring that our point of view, our visions, our voices are heard, not only by us, not only do we communicate to ourselves in the spirit of determining what our interests are, but we stand to defend our culture, our personhood, our peoplehood in the world, in the universe. And so we play a key role in both addressing systemic challenges to our humanity and therefore to all human beings, but also being a force, a light for changing our country and changing our world. And I say that Terry Jones has been one of the pioneers, one of the leaders in that. And in fact, Terry Jones comes from a legacy family. His father was a legendary journalist and publisher as well. So as soon as Terry Jones gets back in with our audio, we'll continue with that conversation. Brenda, I was talking about getting connected back to you again. Here's Terry again. Terry, you there? How's your sound? And so we have visual of Terry, but we don't have the audio. And maybe Kelvin Curia, who's managing this, can kind of walk through with Terry what we can do to get the audio portion of the program working. In the meantime, let me remind people, this is Conversations with Al McFarlane. I'm Al McFarlane. We thank you for being here with us on KFAI 90.3 FM in Minneapolis and St. Paul, Minnesota, that we also are streaming live to Black Press USA, the website of the Black Press of America. And of course, we're streaming live on the Insight News Facebook page and YouTube channel. And we're glad to have this connection. I've been kicking it here with my colleague and childhood friend, my kindergarten friend, classmate, Brenda Lyle Gray, who is a featured columnist for Insight News. And we are standing by to get Terry Jones into the conversation. We see Terry on our StreamYard feed, but we're not hearing his audio. Terry, are you hearing us? Yeah, he's nodding that he's hearing us. So it's a question of working out whatever we need to do to get your audio. And I'm asking Kelvin, you could even dial him at the number I gave you, Kelvin, to see if you can walk him through getting the audio to work properly. In the meantime, Brenda, you and I have talked often about our community's commitment to the defense of this country. I've told you that I'm a veteran and that I remember growing up seeing elders in our community who were National Guards people doing their annual muster. I don't know if you remember that at all, but there'd be a certain time of year right there on 27th and Brooklyn, and I'm not sure where the armory was, but a lot of the men who lived in our neighborhood were members of the Guard, and I'd actually see convoy trucks forming to go wherever they went, and they do their 2-week deployment. And that impression stayed with me that this is a community. We're in a neighborhood where people took seriously the obligation and the opportunity to serve the country. And I have, as a consequence, maintained the position that military service is a good thing, and that we should encourage young people to consider that. And I know that we have all kinds of political persuasions, some of which are, progressive, militant, revolutionary, and some of which are antithetical to the practices of our country, not the principle, but the practice of discrimination, hatred, and racism. And so some of us have experienced a desire and a need to protest what America is in a de facto way, and so that probably has influenced what we've done over the years. But in general, our people have been, first in line, ready to serve, and we've seen the military as an opportunity to both serve the country and to improve ourselves personally. Peter Hayden talked about being able to buy 3 houses, for example, and to afford his education to where he's now Dr. Peter Hayden. And so there's a benefit that comes from the investment. I talk about that all the time. So let me throw that out to you, Brenda Gray. When you think about military service as a revolutionary, what comes to your mind? How do you handle the juxtaposition of the failure of our country to respect and respond to our civil rights, to actually put roadblocks in, while at the same time demanding and expecting our service to support and preserve the American way of life? It's a paradox. How do you look at that? You have to unmute.
I think it's part of this critical race theory that the Lindsey Grahams and the Mitch McConnells don't want to talk about and don't want anyone else to talk about, because that paradox is haunting. When you have 7% of the front line in Vietnam were Americans, and most of them were young Blacks that around our age, and then they are treated in the manner in which they are when they get into the service. And I'm trying to think of the young man's name who turned 100 and talked about
Ray Robinson.
Ray Robinson.
Sergeant Ray Robinson.
And getting on the bus in his uniform after coming home from a horrible battle overseas, and they tell him, you got to get up out of your seat for this white man. And I'm saying, how do we explain this to our children? I know they couldn't explain it to me when we lost so many of our young men with Agent Orange in Vietnam, and they came back, and a lot of them were under drug addiction so bad that we lost a lot of them. They couldn't get a grip on their lives again.
Mhm.
So, and my father was in the service, and he was in Tampa, Florida, and they believed it was a black soldier married to a white woman. She was just high yellow.
Mhm.
I mean, she was looked like she was white, but she wasn't.
Mhm.
But anyway, I I don't know. I'm very concerned about the women in Afghanistan and the aftermath of 20 plus years over there. So it's just ongoing, and it's all tied into our brown skin and the judgment. Um, it's like one of my youngest daughter used to say, "But mom, they don't even know my name."
Mhm. Mhm.
That's how deep it is. Yeah.
Okay. I see another friend of mine has joined the call. John Jameson is a neighbor of mine here in North Minneapolis. He also is a leader in the political and cultural organization of the community. The group he chairs, is called the Northside Residents Redevelopment Council. And I asked him to pop in today from his booth at the Minnesota State Fair. So, John, how you doing? Good to see you. And Terry, let's do a sound with you now, Terry. I see you again.
I think we're here.
And we got
Can you hear
sound.
me?
Great, great. We have sound. Excellent.
Okay, great,
John,
great.
how are you doing first? John Jameson?
Hello, hello. How are you doing?
Doing good. What's happening at the Minnesota State Fair?
Yeah, absolutely. This is my first year at the Minnesota State Fair as a art dealer, a fine art dealer, and I'm really enjoying it. It's a ton of people. It's beautiful out, and we're getting a chance to show our wares and sell a lot of art. So hopefully is the goal. And yeah, I just wanted to let people know that we're here and under the Urban Fly Gallery, and we do custom framing and sell a lot of different art, fine art, and local artists, different African American artists. We have artists from a wide range of backgrounds and histories, but some excellent stuff. And we just wanted to make sure people in our community know that we're here, and that I'm an African American vendor here at the State Fair, which there's not a whole bunch of us out here, but we are out here. But I am probably the only African American fine arts dealer, and probably the only fine arts dealer in the State Fair this year for 2021. So.
Well, I'm glad you're out there. It's good to see you again. Now, Terry Jones, hopefully you didn't lose Terry, because I want to bring you into the conversation, Terry. And John, just hang out as long as you can. I know that you're at the State Fair and you're also talking with customers out there. But I'm glad to see you there. And I've been, Insight News is one of the venues that the fair is using to connect with our community. And frankly, it took a long time for the fair to start advertising to the Black community in Insight News and other ethnic media, but they are doing it now, so kudos to them. And one of the consequences is that more businesses like you ought to be in the fair. Unfortunately, we've got this suppression that the whole state and the country experienced because of COVID-19, but the door is open, so I'm glad you're there. My hope is that your stay at the fair this year is successful, that you meet a lot of great people, you expose a lot of people to phenomenal art and to doing business with a Black business such as your Urban Fly Gallery, and that people get used to doing business with our people, and that we find other of businesses from our community at the State Fair. Hang on, let me just introduce you to my friend Terry Jones. Now, Terry Jones, I mentioned earlier, is the editor and publisher of the Data News Weekly in Louisiana and New Orleans. Terry, good to see you again. Thank you. Sorry for the challenges with the technology, but I hear you now. So please greet
Yeah,
my
we good
audience.
now.
We're great.
Okay,
We're
we're
great.
good now. Okay,
Yeah,
fantastic,
yeah.
fantastic. Yeah.
So I wanted you
Well, I
to talk about
appreciate you
what's
having me
happening.
on.
What's happening in New Orleans with the hurricane?
But luckily, I got out there early before everything happened. It's kind of like when you went through Katrina, which is 16 years ago, and you find out the hurricane's coming on the exact same date as Katrina came 16 years ago. And I tell people, people talk about voodoo in New Orleans. That was just too much for me. I got to go. I had to go, and luckily I did. Right now, we didn't have the water devastation that we had prior to in Katrina, but the electric grid blew up and it ran into the water. So everywhere in New Orleans, through Metairie, Louisiana, and Chalmette, that whole grid is out. So it's not like your neighborhood's out. It's like the whole grid's out. So they have to go in the water, pick that thing up, redo it, whatever they have to do, which could be approximately 10, a week to 10 days. It may be longer. So basically, they're asking for nobody to go back in right now,
Mm-hmm.
and the people that are there to, if you have a generator to buckle down, or if you don't, maybe you need to leave too. So luckily we didn't get the water, but we still have tragedy, if you will.
And
So
you
that
and
should
your
last
son,
for a
you told
while,
me,
man.
took
Me and
off
my son,
to Houston.
we're Houston, yeah, in Houston.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
So,
yeah. I was getting a little too old for walking through water, Al.
like you used to, right?
Yeah, man. I've done it before, but it wasn't appealing anymore. We have always had hurricanes in New Orleans, and it's funny. When I was little, I looked forward to a hurricane because we got out of school. We could eat like
Mhm.
stuff out of a can. Like we thought this was wonderful, right? Until Betsy came back then and flooded my parents' house out, and it wasn't funny anymore.
Mm.
So we
Mhm.
take this pretty seriously. Now the way devastation New Orleans.
What do you remember about Hurricane Betsy and your own parents' house being flooded? What memories and what images and stories come to mind about that you can share with people so that they get a vicarious experience of the impact, the devastation
Yeah.
these storm systems can cause?
Well, it was kind of ironic because my father was a kind of a gadget man back then. So when we went to bed, he had his little TV and he had some weather with radar thing, and he would sit up there and
Mm-mm. Yeah, we probably got a bandwidth problem. Go ahead now.
got us in, but he's got out of that. But he was patient. It wasn't talking about outside; it was talking about on the other side of the city. But then we eventually did flood, so we got out before the water hit us because he heard the wrong thing. So, but it was terrible because it's like you grab something out the closet. You're like 10, 11. So I grabbed this shirt, which had short pants, two pair of short pants. And for a month and a half, I had to wear that shirt and short pants. We had to live
Mm.
from pillar to post from my grandmother's house to my cousin, aunt's house. So it was traumatic, even though it was. But some kids were still dumping in water and swimming. They couldn't figure out how serious this is. So it was traumatic, but and that's the first time we ever had any kind of devastation like that. But that actually happened because the levee was weakened on the richer part of town. They blew that
Hmm.
levee and devastated the black part of town so they could save the expensive houses. So that was man made. That was man done.
It was
They actually
Katrina
blew the
and
levee.
Katrina
No, Bessie. Bessie,
and Betsy.
yeah, Katrina, it fell down. In Bessie, they
Okay.
blew it so the better houses wouldn't get flooded. And
Ah,
we were on the wrong
okay.
side of the track. So,
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah.
And so it's almost like same as highway policy, Brenda, where public officials decide that our lives, our communities, our livelihoods are expendable in order to preserve opportunity and
Mm.
comfort for white people, right? And that really hasn't changed. And
Uh,
that decision-making process really is revealed in almost every sector of the culture and of the community. Terry, talk about your newspaper and the history. I mentioned that your dad is one of the pioneers, a world class and famous journalist. Talk about the
Yeah.
Data News.
Well, we've been here now going on 57 years. So it's a pretty good run. That is a community newspaper. We started off as a bi-weekly, and then I bet you went to a weekly newspaper. My father's original vision was to be an entertainment source because, like, guys like I think everybody knows, like Fats Domino and Alan Toussaint and guys like that, the national guys, they weren't getting any press from the white press. They were writing records for white guys and stuff, but they weren't getting recognition. So he actually made this amusement guide originally. So it was more talked about black entertainment, the void that was sitting there that nobody was filling, right? But as we became more and more popular, we had to deal with regular news. In fact, it's funny part. It turned over because we were so popular. Politicians, when they ran for office, pushed us into doing politics because we were getting the exposure and they wanted to get in. And actually, legally, we could not deny their ads. So
Hmm.
they kind of helped expand us, right? And now, I think we kind of full service, because of the pandemic, we cut back on some pages, but our website, and that's not that I would love anybody to know about what's going on now. Our website's up and running, and we disseminate information. I'm on the New Orleans Chamber of Commerce Board of Directors, and I'm streaming some stuff from that to our website. So
Hmm.
anybody wants to see current information, want to know how to find what's going on now on a daily basis, we can come up there because we keep on feeding that. We're gonna put a paper out, but we're gonna put it out just online because basically there's nobody open right now.
Right, right.
Not many people open, so we're gonna put it online. But we also have an information stream. So our website is ladatanews.com. It's ladatanews.com. And you can go on there and find what's going on in New Orleans on an update. We try to do on a daily basis. I mean, my entire staff is dispersed now. Well, in fact, most of them happened to end up in Houston. It wasn't a plan. We just started calling each other and running and said, everybody's in Houston. So,
Mm.
so we're actually
Hmm.
producing a paper online today as we speak.
Hmm.
And then we don't know what tomorrow's going to bring. We have a couple of supermarkets that advertise with us. So we trying to figure out, what's the most feasible time to get the paper back on the street.
Right. Right, right, right. Uh, talk about the Black Press of America in general. You and I are members of the National Newspaper Publishers Association. I can tell you that since I became a member, I think in the '80s, I've not had I've had the best of times
Mhm.
meeting and hanging out with fellow publishers and editors and people committed to our craft and also committed to the well-being of our people and informing our
Mhm.
people. What's been your experience and how do you describe your history being at and a leader in the National Newspaper Publishers Association?
Well, we've been there a long time before we were gray. Before we were
Mhm.
getting gray. Um, I used to be, I used to send those articles in New Orleans like I was first youngest guy on the board of directors, the youngest guy on this, and the youngest guy with the convention. And you're looking around, and say, okay, I'm the oldest guy on this. So
Now you're the
it's
oldest
like,
guy.
what happened? You know what I mean? So, but I mean, NNP, I think it's been a growing experience for me. I think my dad's small paper here. He actually worked for the liquor business most of his life, right? But he loved the newspaper. He worked at the Louisiana Weekly a couple of so what actually my grooming and my grooming into this industry was through NMPA, through the publishing NMPA. They raised me in this industry, right? So it's been a great experience. I don't know what I would have been or where I would have been without being a part. Of course, I tried to take leadership from the beginning. So I was on the board. I was second vice president. I was first vice president. And then thank God I didn't run for president. That was the exact same year Katrina hit.
Mm.
I was going to progress to try to run for president. So, some told me no, and God was right. I should it wasn't time. But yeah. But I'm still on the board. I'm still active. I'm still the chairman of the convention committee. Con- yeah, the convention committee for our convention. So we pick the hotels and try to get prices fly to be able to show up. And we're looking forward. Back in June, they're coming to New Orleans, so we're looking forward for you guys coming down here for our first real annual convention.
That'll be when this year coming up. When's it going to be?
That's June. That's June coming up.
Okay,
But
great.
all if it all goes right, yeah.
If all goes right, yeah, and if we beat the coronavirus, our sound is degrading, Terry. So I'm going to call the interview quits here. But I want to thank you so much for being part of the program, and it's good to see you. I'm glad that you are safe and your son, and that you and your team have organized a system to keep publishing in a digital vein and to serve our readers, our listeners, and the businesses that we support in New Orleans. And, I just so enjoy and respect you and your work and your history and our common commitment to the upliftment of Black people, of Black America through the Black press of America. So thank you so much.
Well,
And
I appreciate you, Al, as well. Again, that you listen to that la-news.com. If they want to know about anybody, what's going on in New Orleans, loved ones, whatever, they can keep in contact with us there. And I appreciate you continue to fight on all levels of media to kind of get the message across to our folks, right? Only we can talk to each other.
That's right.
Properly, anyway.
Well, I think I want to do this more regular too, reach out to other publishers and have us talk on a regular basis on this program, because I think we all are looking at the same problems in our respective communities, and we can share what our successes have been. And I think our analysis of the politics behind the issues that we face is a true and accurate analysis, and one that I think will benefit the community. So Terry, thank you so much, my friend.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
We'll,
All right.
we'll see you later. Thank you.
Take care.
And
Okay.
I'm Al McFarlane. This is Conversations with Al McFarlane. Thank you for being along with us on Facebook Live, YouTube. Thank you for checking us out through Black Press USA. And thank you, those of you who are listening on KFAI. I'm going to close with the music that we normally do. We do the program 5 days a week. The Tuesday program today is the one that we do live on KFAI. But we typically close the program with a song by Ryan Listman, and it's a great song. So I'm going to share that with you if Kelvin gets it queued up.
Oh, Queen Justice, where are you? Did they beat you up or no? Lock you on the ground, take the crown away from you?
Oh, Lady Liberty, red, white, and blue. Did they take your dignity with their bigotry? Teach you that you're born to lose.
Free or guilty, it's gonna get filthy. Better believe, roll up your sleeves. It's gonna get rough, it's gonna be tough. We all agree, we've had enough.
We've had enough
Of all the rules you break,
We've had enough
of all the money you make.
We've had enough
No more life gets taken.
We've had enough.
This is a proclamation. It's been 400 years and we're 400 late. Together we stand from state to state. Going back in time won't make America great. We need justice now, people won't wait.
Action, no more distraction. Every step we take, we gain traction. If it can happen to one, it can happen to all. United we stand, divided we fall.
Free or guilty, it's gonna get filthy. Better believe, roll up your sleeves. It's gonna get rough, it's gonna be tough. We all agree, we've had enough.
We've had enough
Of all the rules you were breaking.
We had enough
Of all the money you were making.
We had enough
No more life gets taken.
We had enough
This is a proclamation. Free or guilty, it's gonna get filthy. You better believe, just roll up your sleeves. It's gonna get rough, it's gonna be tough. We all agree, we've had enough.
We've had enough
Of all the rules you're breaking.
We've had enough
All the money you're making.
We've had enough
No more life gets taken.
We've had enough
This is the proclamation.
We've had enough
Trayvon Martin and Tommy Rice,
We've had enough
Michael Brown and Eric gonna pay. had enough. So many gone, how can we